You work your whole life trying to build something you can be proud of. Not some get-rich-quick scam, not a lucky break, but real work. Early mornings, cold winters, busted knuckles and long drives just to fix someone's leak at the other end of town. That's what I built. My name's Mark Thompson. I'm 42 years old, and for 16 years, I ran my own plumbing business from the ground up. No investors, no partners. Just me, a second-hand van, and a phone that barely rang in the beginning. I remember those first few years like they were yesterday. I'd be out there fixing pipes all day, then back home trying to figure out how to build a website, make a logo, keep the books. I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. One job turned into two, two turned into four. Before I knew it, I had steady clients, referrals, a good name around town. I wasn't trying to become some empire. I just wanted to make an honest living. Something I could pass down to my kids one day. Something people could trust. A business where when someone called me, they knew I'd show up, get the job done, and not screw them over. I took pride in that. In doing things right. In shaking someone's hand and knowing they'd call me again next time because they knew I gave a damn. That business became my life. It paid for my home, paid for my daughter's school, put food on the table. It was my name on the van, my name on the shirts, my name on every invoice. That meant something to me. And maybe that's what made the betrayal hit so hard. It wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about losing clients or jobs. It was about the one thing I never thought I had to question: trust. Because I didn't lose it to some competitor or some stranger. I lost everything to my own brother-in-law, a man I trusted like family, a man I brought into my business to help him, to give him a shot. A man I taught everything I knew only for him to turn around and gut me from the inside out. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It didn't start with lawsuits or betrayal. It started with overflow work. It started with me trying to do the right thing. You don't start a business thinking someone close to you is going to take it from you. That's not how your mind works when you're just trying to survive. You think about paying bills. You think about getting that next job. You think about doing right by your customers. And if you're lucky, maybe in 10, 15 years, you've built something solid. For me, it started with a wrench, a van that barely started, and a notebook full of numbers I had to chase. I didn't have a plan. I just knew how to work. I knew how to treat people right. And slowly, people started calling back. Word spread. Call Mark, he'll fix it. That's how it grew. One call at a time. There were months where I couldn't afford to take a day off. Pipes don't care if it's Christmas. Water heaters don't care if your back is killing you. You show up or someone else gets the job. So I showed up. Always. Rain, snow, didn't matter. I showed up because that's what you do when your name's on the line. And it paid off. After a while, I wasn't chasing calls anymore. They were chasing me. I started getting booked 2-3 weeks out. Clients told their neighbors and their neighbors told their friends. I'd be fixing a leak in one house and someone next door would walk over and ask for a card. That's how you know you're doing something right. Not because of a fancy website, because people trust you. It got to a point where I couldn't do it alone anymore. I was working weekends, nights, missing birthdays, missing sleep. There were too many jobs and not enough hands. That's a good problem, but it's still a problem. I needed help. Someone I could count on, someone who wouldn't cut corners or embarrass my name. And that's when I started thinking about family. You always hear it. Keep it in the family. Help the people closest to you. It feels right. It feels safe. So I thought of him. My brother-in-law, Ryan, my sister's husband. He was between jobs looking for something steady. Good with his hands, smart, easy to talk to. I figured, why not? I could use the help, and he could use the work. Win-win. It felt like the right move. Families supposed to look out for each other. That's how I was raised. You help when you can. And I wasn't just giving him a job. I was giving him a chance to learn, to grow, to be part of something. I told myself this could be good. He'll work hard, I'll train him, and maybe one day he'll have his own crew under my company. Maybe we'd build something even bigger together. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't just offering him a job. I was handing him the keys to everything I'd built, and I didn't even know it. He didn't even hesitate when I offered him the job, just nodded and said, "Yeah, man, I'd love to." Like he'd been waiting for it. At the time, I took that as a good sign. I thought, here's someone who's hungry, who wants to work, who wants to do something with his hands. I figured I'd teach him everything I knew, and in a year or two, he'd be out there running his own truck under my name. At first, it was simple stuff, holding the flashlight, carrying tools, watching how I handled customers. I wanted him to see how much of this job wasn't just about fixing things. It was about people. It was about being honest, showing up on time, doing what you said you'd do. That's the stuff you can't teach in a textbook. You've got to live it. I figured he'd pick it up just being around me. And to be fair, he did. He learned quick, faster than I expected. In a few weeks, he was doing pipe fittings on his own, running lines, reading layouts. It was like he was made for it. He had the right attitude, joked with the customers, cleaned up after jobs. I started to think, man, maybe I got lucky with this. Maybe this really is going to work out. We'd ride together between jobs and talk about the future. Maybe adding another van. Maybe expanding into HVAC one day. He talked like he was part of it, like this was his too, and I liked that. I liked feeling like I wasn't alone in this anymore. I gave him more responsibility, started letting him take smaller jobs on his own. I'd call and check in, but mostly he had it under control. The clients liked him, said he was polite, fast, professional. I felt proud, like I'd built something that could grow, like I could finally breathe a little. And when I showed him how I handled the books, how I managed quotes, how I talked to suppliers, I didn't think twice. Why would I? He was family. If I couldn't trust him, who could I trust? I even gave him access to the client list, told him how I schedule calls, how I follow up, how I price jobs so we stay competitive without shortchanging ourselves. I laid it all out. Years of experience just handed over, not because I had to, but because I wanted to, because I thought we were building something together. I remember one night we were finishing up a water heater install, and he looked at me and said, "You know, I really appreciate this, Mark. Most people wouldn't do what you're doing for me." And I looked at him and said, "We're family, you don't have to thank me, we look out for each other." I meant that. I really did. I just didn't know then how wrong I was. It's strange how fast trust can turn into routine. You stop second-guessing things. You stop double-checking. You just assume the person beside you is doing what they said they'd do. I didn't see it back then, but that's when things started shifting. Slowly, quietly. I was still busy, maybe even busier than ever. Calls coming in constantly, jobs stacking up, and I was trying to keep up with everything. So, I leaned on Ryan more and more. He had a van now, branded with my company name, company phone, company card. I even started letting him handle estimates because I thought, why not? He's seen me do it 100 times. He knows what's fair. He started coming in a little later sometimes, or finishing a job and heading home without checking in. I chalked it up to him getting comfortable. And honestly, I wanted him to feel trusted. I didn't want to be that guy breathing down his neck. I figured, if I give him space, he'll take more ownership. And that's what you want in someone you're building with, right? But little things started to bug me. Nothing big at first. A couple of customers didn't pay on time. Turned out he forgot to collect. A job site wasn't cleaned up the way I would have done it. A supplier mentioned he'd placed an order I didn't know about, but I brushed it off. Everyone makes mistakes. He's learning. No big deal. Then one of my oldest clients called me and said, "Hey Mark, just confirming your guy Ryan's handling our new bathroom install, right? He said he's doing it on his own now, under your umbrella." And I laughed, confused, said, "Yeah, Ryan works with me, but there's no umbrella, he's on the team." And the client goes quiet and says, "That's not what he said." I remember just standing there, phone to my ear, thinking maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he just worded it wrong. Maybe the client heard wrong. So I called Ryan and asked about it. He played it off like it was nothing. "Ah, yeah, I just meant I was handling the job. They must have taken it the wrong way." I believed him. Because that's what you do when someone looks you in the eye and says, "It's all good." Because I didn't want to be paranoid. I didn't want to be that guy who lets one weird moment ruin a good working relationship. But that little doubt, it stuck with me. It lingered. It made me start watching things a little closer, double-checking schedules, looking at who was calling in, asking myself questions I didn't want to ask. And that's when the cracks really started to show. You ever have that feeling in your gut where something just doesn't sit right? Like you can't explain it, but you know deep down something's off. That was me, for weeks, maybe longer. I kept brushing it aside, telling myself I was overthinking things, that I was just tired, overworked, maybe even a little too protective of what I'd built. But deep down, I knew. Calls started getting weird. Long-time clients would say things like, "Oh, I thought you were booked. Your guy said you weren't taking on smaller jobs anymore." Or, "Ryan told us you were stepping back from the business." Stepping back. I was working more than ever. I was doing back-to-back jobs, answering calls at night, running paperwork at home after dinner. I hadn't taken a real break in years. At first I'd just laugh it off, tell them, "Nope, still in the game, still showing up." But every time I heard something like that, it hit me harder. Why would he say that? Why would he tell people I was stepping away? Why would he turn away small jobs without even asking me? Then I started noticing some invoices were missing from the books. Not a lot, just a few here and there. Small jobs, the ones he handled alone. I'd look for the paperwork and he'd say he forgot to enter it, or he was waiting on payment. Always some excuse. Always casual. Too casual. One night I stayed up late going through the books, job by job, date by date. I matched up calls with invoices, messages with payments, and slowly a pattern started to form. Jobs that were never logged, clients who swore they'd paid, materials ordered that I never used. It wasn't obvious. He was careful, sloppy but careful. I told myself I needed to talk to him. Just sit down, clear the air. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was just stressed. But every time I thought about confronting him, something in me pulled back. Because what if I wasn't wrong? What if this wasn't a misunderstanding? What if someone I trusted, someone I treated like a brother, was actually stealing from me? That thought scared me more than anything, because once you say it out loud, once you admit it to yourself, there's no turning back. It changes everything. And deep down, I knew something was coming. Something I wasn't ready for. I didn't find out from him. I found out from a stranger. A guy I'd never met before. Called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, just wanted to double check. You starting a new company? Got a flyer here that says Mark's Plumbing Solutions, different number, different logo, but it's got your name on it." I paused. Thought maybe it was some scam. Maybe someone was just using my name. I told the guy to send me a picture. And when it came through, I just stared at it. My name was there, big letters, bold font, but nothing else was mine. Different phone number, different email, different address. But there it was. Mark's Plumbing Solutions. I read it over and over again, thinking maybe it was a mistake. But the number, the layout, even the slogan, it was too familiar. I scrolled to the bottom and saw the business license number. That's what did it. That's when it hit me. It was real. And I didn't recognize that license number because it wasn't mine. I looked it up, checked the registry, and there it was. New plumbing company, registered just 2 months ago. Owner listed as Ryan Bennett. My brother-in-law, I remember just sitting there, not moving, not saying anything. My phone in my hand, heart pounding. You think when something like this happens, you'll get angry right away. But I didn't. I was just still, numb, trying to make sense of it. I brought him in, I gave him everything. Every tool, every contact, every trick I learned over 16 years. I handed it over because I thought we were building something together. And the whole time he was building his own thing behind my back, using my name, my clients, my reputation. I thought about every job I sent him to. Every time he said, "I'll handle it." Every time he came back with a smile and said, "It went great." And now I had to wonder, how many of those jobs were his? How many clients did he pull aside and say, "Hey, call me direct next time"? I didn't even know what to do first. Call him? Call my lawyer? Call my sister? Part of me didn't want to believe it was real. Part of me wanted to ask him face to face, why? But I already knew the answer. He wanted what I had, but he didn't want to earn it. I called him. I don't know what I expected. Maybe some kind of apology, maybe a denial, maybe even a fight. But when he picked up, he answered like nothing had happened, just said, "Hey man, what's up?" Like it was a normal day, like he hadn't just stabbed me in the back. I didn't waste time. I asked him straight up, "What is Mark's Plumbing Solutions? Why is your name on it? Why are my clients getting flyers with my name and your number?" There was a pause, just silence on the other end. And then he laughed. I'll never forget that. He laughed like it was funny, like I was overreacting. He said, "I was going to tell you, I was just getting something started on the side. It's not a big deal." Not a big deal. That's what he called it. He used my name, my work, my clients, and it wasn't a big deal. I asked him how long this had been going on. He said, "A couple months. I didn't think you'd mind." Didn't think I'd mind. I wanted to yell. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, but I just sat there trying to stay calm. I said, "You used my name, Ryan. My name, my reputation. You told people I was stepping back. You told people I was done." And he goes, "Well, you were stretched thin. I figured I'd help out, take the pressure off." Like he was doing me a favor. It wasn't even guilt in his voice, it was confidence, like he believed he'd earned it, like he deserved it. I asked him why he didn't just talk to me, tell me what he wanted. And he said, "Because you wouldn't have said yes. You would have kept me under you forever." That's when it all clicked. He never saw it as my business. He thought I was holding him back, that working with me was some kind of leash. He didn't want to build something with me. He wanted to take what I built and put his name on it. I hung up, didn't say another word. I just sat there, phone in my hand, thinking about every job we did together, every ride in the van, every laugh, every time I looked at him and thought, this guy's family, he's solid. And now it all felt like a lie. He didn't just start a business, he declared war. The next few days were chaos. Word spread fast, faster than I could control it. Clients started calling, confused, asking why there were two different numbers for the same company. Some thought I'd sold the business. Others thought I'd gone into partnership with someone new. A few said they'd already booked jobs with Ryan because he said I was stepping down. I tried to explain, but it was like playing catch-up in a race I didn't even know I was in. Every time I tried to clear things up, I found out about another job he'd taken, another client he'd convinced, another lie he'd told. It wasn't just business, it was personal. He wasn't just trying to build something, he was trying to erase me from what I built. I started reaching out to every client I could, one by one, phone calls, emails, even showing up at their doors if I had to. Telling them the truth, telling them I was still here, that I hadn't stepped away, that the name on those flyers wasn't mine. Some believed me, some didn't know what to think, and a few looked at me like I was the one doing something wrong. It was humiliating, sitting across from people I'd worked for, people who knew me, who trusted me, and having to explain that my own brother-in-law had taken what wasn't his. I could see it in their eyes, that doubt, that hesitation, that question they didn't want to ask but couldn't help but think, if he did this to you, how do I know you didn't do something to deserve it? The worst part, I still hadn't told my sister. I didn't know how. I didn't know what it would do to the family, what it would do to her. I kept thinking maybe he'd come clean. Maybe he'd admit what he did and try to fix it before it all blew up. But he didn't. Instead, I got served, right there at my house. Plain white envelope, my name on the front, a lawsuit, filed by Ryan, claiming I stole his business model, said I used his ideas, said I took credit for his work. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. He was suing me. After stealing my clients, using my name, copying my branding, he was suing me. I stood there with the papers in my hand, reading them over and over again, waiting to wake up from whatever nightmare I'd just stepped into. But it wasn't a nightmare. It was real. And I knew then, this wasn't just betrayal. This was a full-blown attack. I didn't even know what to feel anymore. Angry, hurt, confused, it all blended together into something heavier, something that just sat in my chest and wouldn't go away. I kept thinking about that moment when I handed Ryan the keys to the van, the company card, the uniform with my logo on it. I remembered how proud he looked, like he was finally part of something. And now here I was, holding legal papers with my name printed next to words like theft and misrepresentation. I got a lawyer. I had no choice. I sat in an office across from someone I'd never met before, explaining how I brought my brother-in-law into my business to help with overflow, and now he was suing me for stealing what I built before he ever showed up. The lawyer looked at me the way people look at messy family stories, curious but careful. She told me we'd fight it, but lawsuits don't care about what's right. They care about what's written down, what's documented, what can be proved. And I realized something. Ryan had been planning this for longer than I thought. He'd kept receipts, he'd taken photos, he'd sent emails from his own account instead of the company's. He'd set it all up like he was the brains behind the whole thing. He was smart. I'll give him that. He made sure when the time came, it looked like I was the one riding his coattails. I started losing sleep, couldn't focus on jobs, couldn't think straight. I'd be halfway through an install and forget which tool I needed. I'd sit in the truck outside a client's house for 10 minutes before I could even knock. I was falling apart, and I knew it. The business was still going, barely, but my name was damaged. People didn't know who to believe. Some were staying away altogether, not wanting to be caught in the middle of what they called a family dispute. But this wasn't a dispute. This was a theft. This was betrayal, wearing my last name and smiling like nothing was wrong. Every time I saw his name, every time I heard someone say, "Isn't Ryan your brother-in-law?" it felt like a punch to the gut. I wasn't just losing clients. I was losing years of hard work, day by day, piece by piece. And the worst part was knowing that he didn't feel a shred of guilt. If he did, I never saw it. He walked around like he'd won something, like I had it coming. I kept thinking maybe it would blow over, maybe the truth would come out and people would see it for what it was. But life doesn't work like that. Not when someone's telling a better story. And right now, he was telling one hell of a story. And I had to decide if I was going to let him finish it, or if I was going to fight for the ending I deserved. I never thought it would come to this. Me, sitting in a courtroom, defending everything I built from someone I trusted more than anyone. It felt surreal. Every time I looked at Ryan across the room, I wanted to ask him how he could do this, how he could turn on family, on me, and take what wasn't his. But I didn't say a word. I just let the lawyers do their thing. The hearing dragged on. Paperwork, testimonies, arguments. I listened as his side painted me as the opportunist, the one who stole ideas, who kept him in the dark, who tried to hold him back. It was all twisted, but some of it sounded convincing, and I could see it in the judge's eyes. This wasn't just about facts. It was about whose story was cleaner, whose version fit better in black and white. I thought about my wife, my sister, sitting outside the courtroom. How could I explain this to her? How could I tell her that her own brother was fighting me over something that was mine from the start? That this wasn't just a business dispute, it was tearing our family apart. But I also thought about why I started this business in the first place, about the late nights, the hard work, the sacrifices, about every call I took at 2 a.m., every job done right even when no one was watching. That was mine, that was my sweat and my dreams. So I fought. Every step of the way. I showed up with my records, my contracts, my proof. I told my story, how I brought Ryan in, how I trusted him, how he broke that trust. And I waited. Because sometimes the hardest battles aren't about money or contracts. They're about standing up for who you are and what you've built, even when the people closest to you try to take it away. When the dust finally settled, I realized something no courtroom or contract could fix. The damage wasn't just to my business, it was to the family, to the people I loved, to the trust I thought we had. I sat alone one night, thinking back to how it all started, how I'd welcomed Ryan in, hoping to share the load, to build something together, how I never imagined it would end with him suing me, stealing from me, turning everything upside down. It's strange how betrayal cuts the deepest when it comes from someone you called family. Not just because they took what was yours, but because they broke the bond that was supposed to be unbreakable. The late-night calls stopped. The laughs we shared faded into silence. Even family gatherings became awkward, filled with questions no one wanted to ask. I learned something about trust that you only learn the hard way. That sometimes, no matter how much you give, no matter how much you care, some people won't honor it. They'll take it, twist it, and use it against you. And the hardest part? Knowing you can't change that. But I also learned something about myself, that even when everything feels lost, you can still stand up. You can rebuild. You can find a way forward, even if the road looks different than you planned. This isn't just a story about a stolen business. It's a story about betrayal, about family, and about fighting to hold on to what's yours, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. And this is where my story really begins. After everything that happened, I knew I had two choices. I could let it break me, let it swallow me whole, or I could use it as fuel to rebuild. I won't lie, there were days when the weight felt too heavy. When waking up meant facing the mess Ryan left behind. When every phone call reminded me that trust wasn't a given anymore. But I kept reminding myself why I started this in the first place. I wasn't just fixing pipes or unclogging drains. I was building a reputation, a business, a future for my family, and no lawsuit, no betrayal, no broken promises were going to take that away. I took a step back, cleaned the slate, and started fresh. It wasn't easy. I had to reach out to clients again, explain everything, rebuild relationships one at a time. Some came back, some didn't. But those who did, they mattered the most. I hired new people, trained them the way I was trained, and built a team that believed in what we were doing. I tightened up contracts, changed my processes, and made sure I never left anything to chance again. And slowly, things started to turn around. The business grew again, the phone rang with new jobs, the van rolled out with my name proudly on the side, not just as a brand, but as a symbol of what I refused to let go. It wasn't just about plumbing anymore. It was about resilience, about standing back up when the world tried to knock you down, about proving that even when someone you trusted tries to steal your future, you can still build one of your own. That's the story I want you to remember. Not the betrayal, not the lawsuit, but the comeback. Because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the strongest victories. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me, not just as a business owner, but as a person. I learned the hard way that trust isn't something you give lightly, that sometimes the people closest to you can hurt you the most. But I also learned that pain doesn't have to be the end of the story. I found strength I didn't know I had. I found a drive to protect what I built, not just for myself, but for the people who believed in me. Every job I finished after that felt like a small victory. Every client who came back was a reminder that what I built wasn't just a business, it was a promise. The family was never the same. That part hurts the most, but I learned to separate what happened from who I am. I couldn't control what Ryan did, but I could control how I moved forward. I chose to focus on growth, on rebuilding trust, on creating something stronger than before. Sometimes the people you think will have your back don't, and sometimes the fight isn't just about money or contracts, it's about standing up for your truth. This story isn't just about a stolen business, it's about betrayal, resilience, and finding a way back when everything feels lost. And maybe, if you listen close enough, you'll find something in it that speaks to your own battles, your own fights, your own comeback. Because in the end, it's not about what was taken, it's about what you choose to do next. People always say, family is everything. I used to believe that without question, but after everything that happened, I had to rethink what family really means, because sometimes family can be the source of your greatest pain. Sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who let you down the hardest. It's not easy to face that truth. It's not easy to look at the people you love and realize they may never see things the way you do. But I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, loyalty, and honesty. It's about standing by each other when things get tough, not tearing each other down. I had to find a new way to be around my family, to protect myself and still keep the bonds that mattered. It wasn't perfect. There were fights, cold shoulders, and long silences. But I also found moments of understanding, of forgiveness, not for what happened, but for the sake of moving forward. I realized that sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you keep. Sometimes you have to build your own, people who have your back, who believe in you, who stand with you through thick and thin. That's what I chose to focus on, building a new kind of family, one built on trust and respect, one that can survive the worst storms. Because at the end of the day, no matter what happens, you have to protect your peace. You have to protect your future. And sometimes that means making the hardest decisions of all. Sometimes life doesn't give you the endings you want. Sometimes it gives you lessons wrapped in pain, wrapped in loss, wrapped in things you never saw coming. But those lessons shape you. They make you stronger, wiser, more careful with who you trust and how you move forward. I won't pretend this story has a perfect ending. There's still tension, still memories that sting. But I can say this, I'm still here. I'm still running my business, still answering those calls at all hours, still building something from the ground up. And I'm doing it on my terms now, with hard-earned caution and a clearer sense of who I am and what I stand for. The betrayal hurt, but it didn't break me. It didn't define me. If you take anything away from this story, let it be this. No matter how deep the cut, no matter how close the wound, you can choose what comes next. You can choose to let it destroy you, or you can choose to rise. I chose to rise. And that made all the difference. This is the end of my story. Thank you for watching, and if you like this kind of content, kindly leave us a like, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you.